What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. Tonight, a good episode in store for the listeners, and thank you guys all for listening to the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. I have had a shitload of fun doing this podcast, and it is a huge hobby of mine to put this podcast together, promote it, everything that comes with it. It's a lot of fun creating ideas for each show, and it's almost become a daily podcast, and it's trending towards that direction with the ever-flowing ideas that I have running through my head. So tonight, I am going to give you all my final prediction for what will take place tomorrow night live on pay-per-view at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. The return of the biggest name in mixed martial arts history, Ronda Rousey, returns to the UFC to take on the now women's bantamweight champion Amanda Nunes, after Amanda Nunes had destroyed Miesha Tate to take the title. And obviously a lot has happened within the last calendar year in the women's bantamweight division. It all started in November of 2015, where Ronda Rousey lost her title to Holly Holm via TKO, via head kick, and Holly Holm then won the title and defended it against Miesha Tate in her first title defense at the ever-famous UFC 196. She was up 3-1 on some scorecards, tied maybe going into that fifth round with Miesha Tate, and Miesha Tate submitted her in the fifth and final round. Then Miesha Tate headlined UFC 200 versus Amanda Nunes, and she lost. Amanda Nunes won, and now Nunes is now fighting Ronda Rousey, and Ronda Rousey's return fight more than a year outside of the UFC octagon. So much anticipation for this fight. This is probably the biggest fight in female fighting history, female mixed martial arts history. Probably is an understatement. I really think that this is the biggest fight in women's bantamweight history. And the biggest fight probably would have been a rematch with Holly Holm and Ronda Rousey had that happen, but Ronda wanted to take her break. Holly wanted to continue fighting, and the way things went, Holly lost, and now Amanda Nunes is the champ, and Amanda Nunes will now take on Ronda Rousey. I have been a harsh critic of Ronda Rousey. The layoff that she took, the amount of time that she has taken to come back, I thought that as a champion, as a face of the UFC, as a face for all women, she should have really shown urgency in getting that loss back. Very similarly to the way that Conor McGregor handled his business after the loss. He took it to heart, but he was really trying to get back in there with Nate Diaz when most people advised him not to, and he eventually did 5 months after the fact of the loss. So Ronda Rousey, had pretty much left the public eye. And I want to talk about that a little bit more on tonight's show, due in large part to the fact that she is still doing that. She is still avoiding the public eye. Today is a great example. She stepped onto the scale. She walked off the scale almost immediately. And it was very, very interesting to see her step onto the scale and just not even smile for the cameras. That was for the actual weigh-in. The weigh-in tonight, she stepped onto the scale in front of all the fans, gave a short but sweet smile, and then stepped off the scale and faced off with Amanda Nunes, who walked in with a lion's head. They call it a lioness for a reason. She is a lion in the octagon. She walked in with a lion's mask, with a lion mask on, and I found that to be very interesting. There is so much more that comes into play rather than just the X's and O's of the fight, matching skill for skill. There is a lot that goes into it. The pre-fight stuff really does matter. And to be quite honest with you, this last year there has been harsh criticism for Ronda Rousey, warranted criticism for the fact that she did not really stand up as a champion, or as a former champion, I should say. And really show willingness to fight again until recently, when she decided that she was coming back, and it was announced on The Herd with Colin Cowherd by Dana White that she would be coming back. So there's criticism that's warranted, but when you look at the physical condition that Ronda Rousey is in currently, you have to, quiet down the talk of Ronda Rousey being unmotivated. She is in fantastic shape. She is in the best shape that I have ever seen her in throughout her entire career. And she looks very muscular. She looks very lean. She looks very strong. And if you were to look at the weigh-ins in comparison to tomorrow night's fight and the weigh-in for Holly Holm, it is night and day. She was in very good shape for the Holly Holm fight. She was thin, but now she looks muscular. She looks toned. She has a six-pack of abs. She looks like she is in fantastic shape. And I have to take that into consideration when making this prediction. I do think Ronda Rousey is going to come into this fight motivated. I do think the questions of motivation should not be there. Should we question the fact that she kind of hid from the spotlight? Yes, I would question that. I have questioned that myself. But since she decided to return, she looks like she is in impeccable shape. There are mental aspects of the fight game that she does not want to partake in, and some would say that she has earned the right not to partake in the full-on media obligations that are presented to most UFC fighters, most MMA fighters. They have to do the promotion themselves as well, and Ronda has sort of refused to do that in some aspects of doing media scrums and talking to the media themselves. She'll do the UFC embedded, she'll be on that for a little bit, but as far as taking questions from reporters, she has shown no willingness to do so, and I find that to be very interesting for a lot of reasons. Does she feel betrayed by the media as far as the way the media portrayed her after her loss, or the way that they kind of chastised her, poked fun at her for losing? Probably. But people seem to forget the fact that Ronda Rousey was not the classiest champion. She did give the middle finger to Miesha Tate when they were climbing the rock wall on The Ultimate Fighter. She did not shake Miesha Tate's hand after Miesha Tate went to shake her hand after their fight, after Ronda Rousey had submitted her. Miesha Tate lended her hand in shaking, as a way of showing sportsmanship, and Ronda denied her handshake. And then there was the "Don't Cry" to Betch Kohea. There's been several other instances, holding onto guillotines when the girl is clearly unconscious. Things like that. Fans notice those things. Those things are noticed. And for her to do those things in respect of in the face of MMA, as one of the faces of MMA, fans do not forget that. So when she lost, there were people watching her fight to see her win, and there were people watching her fight to see her lose. I call it the Floyd Mayweather treatment. People have wanted to see Floyd Mayweather win. They want to see him to continue to win, but they tune in also to see him lose because of his persona and the way he carries himself. And Ronda Rousey, I wouldn't compare her to Floyd Mayweather in the slightest, but in certain regard to her personality and certain characteristics of her personality, there are some similarities. She's brash, she was nasty, she's mean, she's nasty, as Dana White said, and I think that goes without, you can't forget that stuff as a fan, especially the diehard fans like myself. We were waiting for her to lose to be able to criticize her because I truly thought that she was relaxed. She didn't think that there was any challenges for her. She didn't think that, she thought that she was on top of the world. She thought that she was going to retire undefeated. She didn't see anyone down the line being any threat to her whatsoever, no matter who was put in front of her. She saw them as weak, and in this game, you can't have that mentality. And I think that she doesn't, heading into this fight with Amanda Nunes. I think that we will see a clear-minded Ronda Rousey, a fighter that wants to do whatever is humanly possible to win this fight. Will that be enough? Will that be enough versus a woman like Amanda Nunes who punches very hard? She busted up Miesha Tate's face very quickly and put her basically on the ropes, so to speak, from the get-go. As soon as the bell rang 20, 30 seconds in, Miesha Tate's nose was broken. She realized that Amanda Nunes hit harder than any other fighter that she had faced, which says a lot, being that she fought Ronda Rousey twice, and being that Miesha Tate had fought Holly Holm once as well. That says a lot, that she literally went on Undisputed on FS1 and said that Amanda Nunes hits harder than any other fighter she's ever fought. Miesha Tate's been in this game for a long time. So for her to say that Amanda Nunes is the hardest hitting fighter, that says a lot. So I do think that Amanda Nunes will win this fight. I think that she hits very hard. She has great Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I think if Ronda were to take her down, it'll be very interesting to see who comes out on the winning end of that end of the spectrum. Ronda, the medalist in judo in the Olympics, obviously she's got the armbar victories to her credit. Amanda Nunes, though, is a nasty Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, and she has competed in tournaments her entire life as a Brazilian female. And I will say, too, there's another end of the spectrum to this fight, that they have not promoted Amanda Nunes enough. And for Joe Rogan to be the first guy to bring that up as a UFC employee, that's pretty bad. She's the first openly gay champion in mixed martial arts history, and she's a great ambassador for the sport for Brazil. She's a great ambassador for the sport for women. She seems like a very nice person, caring person. And I thought the UFC really missed the boat on this fight as far as promoting it. They could have done a much better job promoting it. On one end, you had Ronda Rousey, who didn't want to promote it. On another end, you don't want to over-promote it too much with Amanda Nunes. It was a tough spot. Ronda Rousey not wanting to promote the fight. They could promote the fight too much with Amanda Nunes, and Amanda Nunes could become distracted very similarly to the way Ronda Rousey became distracted over the course of her career. So it was a tough sledding for the UFC for this event. The co-main event, Dominic Cruz versus Cody Garbrandt. Tensions are high between both fighters, as expected. Cody Garbrandt out of the Team Alpha Male brigade, you could say. And I don't think he has enough in his repertoire to really challenge Dominic Cruz. I think he hits hard. But other than that, if he is missing with the style that Dominic Cruz has, with the really mental acumen that Dominic Cruz has, the cagemanship, octagonsmanship, ringsmanship, you could say. It's not a ring, it's an octagon, but the savviness that Dominic Cruz has in the cage, the experience that he has in big fights over Cody Garbrandt, I think that alone will prove to be too much for Cody Garbrandt. I like the kid. I think he's got a lot of spunk, you could say. But I don't know if it's enough for this fight. It's a title fight against probably the best bantamweight fighter in UFC history. He took 2 or 3 from Uriah Faber, who many say is one of the greatest featherweights/bantamweights of all time. He did beat TJ Dillashaw after having the lengthy layoff that he had and the amount of devastating injuries that he had. You can make a case that Dominic Cruz is the number 1 pound-for-pound fighter in mixed martial arts. That's a barbershop discussion, but you could make that case. I think Cruz is going to win. I think Nunes is going to win. I see the fight with Nunes and Rousey going into the 3rd or 4th round with Nunes winning by submission. And I see the Cruz-Garbrandt fight going to decision for Dominic Cruz. Both champions will retain their belts. Thanks for tuning in to the Rousey-Nunes prediction. I'm Ryan Thomas. That was the Thomas Take.